Let's have a prayer as we start. Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you, Father, for the nice sunshine we have this morning. Thankful that we can assemble here together with freedom to do so and a desire to do so. We're thankful that we have your word in our language and we can study it as we will this morning. Thankful that our children are going to be able to do the same thing, and we're just blessed by that. Please be with us as we study and help us to learn those things we need to learn and apply them to our lives. Teach them to our children and our grandchildren, and hopefully, Father, that we will be able to spend eternity in heaven with you. In Jesus' name, amen. I think this microphone's a little loud. Yeah, just a little bit, getting feedback from it. How's that sound to everybody? Is that okay? Anybody hear it? Everybody hear? Okay. Yeah. We still have people coming through the door. Well, really, they're opening the door and coming through it. They're not really coming through the door. Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're going to be on page 53 in your workbook if you have one. And we're going to study the second part of alcohol consumption. We had a class last week, and we're going to finish the study on alcohol today. Next week, I think there's a 2-lesson study on marijuana, and we'll kind of expand that a little bit to talk about other drugs as well. What I'd like to do this morning is start with Ephesians chapter 5. I'm not going to follow the workbook as it comes. I'll be referring to it, but I just got a way I want to go this morning. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18. Ephesians 5:18. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation or excess, rioting, those words, but be filled with the Spirit. Okay, so we know that there are many, many verses in the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament both, that condemn excessive drinking and condemn drunkenness, right? And I don't know a Christian who doesn't believe that drunkenness is wrong or excessive drinking is wrong. And I just want to say something about what I think about it so you'll know where I stand. And I don't mean to be saying I'm an expert or I have it all down. I know I don't. Because over the 50 years that I've been in the church, I have had discussions with many, many preachers and elders and deacons and members, and I know that for that length of time, there has been a discussion about this. And I know that there have been at least 2 sides to this. One side is that it's a sin for a Christian to take one single drink. The other side is that it is okay for a Christian to drink in his own home privately when it is not a stumbling block to anyone else, that idea. And somewhere in there, there's different views of each one of those, but that's basically the 2 different views. I have never drank. I mentioned to you that I tried wine once and got a buzz, and that affected me, and I said, no more. Before that, I think I had drank with a friend of mine 2 beers. I can't remember, and 1 beer at a time, 1 beer and 1 beer. I can't remember that 1 beer affecting me at all. I don't remember any difference between that 1 beer and a Coke. I just can't remember that. But I do not drink. I did not encourage my children to drink, although one of them decided he wanted to. And I do not encourage my grandchildren to drink or anybody else to drink. I believe it is excessively dangerous to even start drinking. because of where it could end up and the damage it can do to a person, his family, the damage it does to our society that we're living in today. Okay, so that's where I stand with this. Now here's a question I want to ask you with verse 18. He says, do not be drunk with wine. Now, why didn't he say, just don't drink wine? Well, why didn't he say, just drink grape juice? If these people were not drinking wine. Now we know that wine, as it's used in the Old Testament, the primary word for wine in the Old Testament, it's either grape juice or it's intoxicating. The same thing's true in the New Testament. And this couldn't possibly be grape juice, because I don't think you can get drunk on grape juice, can you? So he says, do not be drunk with wine. Now, what do you think? I mean, is there anything in that would imply that these people, maybe some of them, have been drinking? And so he has to remind them, don't be drunk. Don't be filled with wine, but be filled with the Spirit. It can be, right. Like Paul tells Timothy. Okay.
In other words, you use the wine, but not to be drunk with it, because
Right.
it's used for other purposes.
And that's definitely true, especially back in those days when they did not have the medicines that we have today. And when he told Timothy, remember what he said to him? Take a little wine. You know, so does it make sense to you that he said take a little grape juice? Would he really need to limit Timothy's partaking of grape juice for his stomach's sake? But I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was making a joke, well, maybe he was diabetic.
Okay, yeah, that would work. Maybe he was. Bonnie.
Things that they bring up is that we've got to realize that in those times we think that they were not able to eat juice without it hurting, but yet there's proof that they were able to do it. And so it is an excellent conspiracy.
You know, it depends on, and I have done that too, and I'm sure others have, and it depends on who you read. It's better, rather than reading from what one individual says, or even one school of medicine says, read from the encyclopedias and those that are telling you that have a wider view of things, and it will help a lot more. And I read, I forget where I read this now, but the fella was not a member of the church, but he wrote this article on drinking, and he said that drinking wine in the New Testament, each instance was fermented. And I thought, whoa, where do you get that? You know, the word wine can mean either grape juice or fermented juice. It doesn't always mean intoxicating drink, and doesn't always mean grape juice. And that's why I think we have some trouble in the interpretation of whether you can drink even. To me, there's no question about should you drink. The answer is no to that, and should be for everyone. Okay, thank you. Did y'all hear what Bonnie said? She was speaking from the back. Well, she's talking about it. What was the name of that? Gospel Broadcast, the GBN network, okay? Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
What it could have been in this concert. I wish we could see it. I
Mhm.
really can't.
Mm-hmm.
You
Okay.
can play that here if people want to see
I
it.
mean, it's wonderful. It opened my eyes to a lot of things that I did not know I really can. Well, scripture after scripture, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't use that.
Okay. So it's on Gospel Broadcasting Network, a video, I guess, is it one video or a series of videos on drinking and alcohol? So, okay, so this, to us today, who this is applying to, of course, he says, don't be drunk with wine. Here's one verse that tells us, don't be drunk with wine. So that pretty much should settle it for us about drunkenness. Okay, and that's not the problem, is it? Drunkenness is not the problem. It's whether or not someone has the right to take a drink occasionally. Okay? Not a binge drinker. You know, a lot of the young people may not drink for a long time. Then they get together with a bunch of their friends. They bring in the big things of alcohol, and then they binge drink. Well, that's excessive drinking. That's wrong. If they do that on a continual basis, that's as wrong as being the town drunk, you know. Okay, we know the qualifications for elders and deacons in 1 Timothy 3. And here's something that, you know, I don't know why exactly there's a difference, but 1 Timothy 3, in reference to the elders, it says that they're not given to wine. Not given to wine. Then you come down to look at the deacons, it says not given to much wine. And in Titus chapter 2, when it talks about the older women in the church who should be examples and should teach the younger women, it says that they are not to be given to much wine. Oh, here's two different verses where it says much wine, and then one verse where it just says don't be given to wine. There's got to be a difference in that. I know that some people look at it and say, well, that means the same thing. Well, why didn't he just say the same thing then? If that's the same qualification for deacons and elders, why didn't he say it the same way? It's confusing. Has to be a little bit confusing if you've got much wine regarding elders and just wine when it comes to the deacon. So I can see why an elder, a leader in the church, should never be a drinker. You know, because you might decide one evening you're going to drink a couple of beers, and then you get a call from church, and you got to make a decision. Okay, you don't have the judgmental capacity, the wisdom, you know, to make that important decision. Or you need to get in your car and go somewhere, and you can't do that because you've been drinking some. Somebody had a comment. Who was it? Nobody had a comment? I must upstairs. Kent? Maybe he didn't either. Maybe he's just talking to himself up there.
I think there is. I think what you said is accurate. Because you, as an elder, even as a deacon, you are representing yourself as a representative of God. And for you to go to someone who's struggling with alcohol on your breath is not a good thing.
Oh, no.
That would be probably the worst thing you could possibly do. And I've never been a drinker either. I'm like you, I tried it once when I was young. I didn't like the taste of it. So I never got involved in it. But when we're talking about evangelizing people, when we're talking about talking to people about coming to Christ who are involved in that, my wife had an alcoholic father. My
Right.
But if you are, work on getting away from it for a number of different reasons. For health sake, for reference's sake, tribe's sake, for sake of reputation, all of those.
Right. Y'all heard that, I'm sure. Okay, so that's something, when we're looking over our interpretation of these are things we have to take into consideration. Don't be drunk with wine, he says. Don't be given to wine, period, to the elder. And then don't be given to much wine to the deacon and the older women in the congregation. Whether there's a difference in those two, I'm not sure completely. And let me say this too. If someone wants to get up here in class and teach that a Christian cannot drink, that his view is that a Christian cannot drink and that the first drink they drink is they're that much drunk, I would not stop them from doing that. What I don't want to see, and whether it's that view or my view or your view, is someone to say, this is it. This is exactly what God says in His Word. And if you disagree with it, then you are wrong. Absolutely. So that's the way I look at that. And think for a minute. Jesus says, whoever looks upon a woman with lust commits adultery with her in his heart already. How many times can you look at a woman and it not be adultery? What's the key thing in that verse? Lust, right. That's the qualifier. Okay, you're looking at that woman not because, okay, she's a beautiful woman sitting there. She's got nice hair. She's dressed nicely. But lust. There, I'm looking at that woman. That's all I have on my mind. Well, here's drinking. Okay, I take a drink, and I want to drink. I just want to give everything to that drinking. I want to commit adultery with it, so I'm going to drink it with lust. I'm coveting it. I'm drinking, and I want to drink more. And a lot of people are like that, aren't they? We know that. So I think there's something to take into consideration there when we're looking at these verses. Okay? All right. Let's go back to the Old Testament for just a minute.
I was concerned about this second verse in the third verse in the second chapter of Titus,
Mhm.
where there's the older women, we're supposed to teach the younger women
Right.
good things and to be. So how many young women are going to let us older women try to teach them to be good and nice and loving their husbands and so forth? And they tell us that we're, old school and not up with the times, et cetera, et cetera. How many young women could we talk to about being loyal to their husbands, love their husbands and so forth? I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Well, you got a good point there, because with the way the women's liberation movement goes today and lots of other concepts with it, the awoke, deal and all kinds of things coming together, there are a lot of women who have all their lives had examples around them and been taught, you're equal with this man in all respects, and the younger women are growing up in a different way than what the Bible teaches, and they don't look to the Bible for the answer to their questions.
I was just wondering how many young women are going to let us tell them what to do and how to love their husbands.
Yeah. How many young women in here would do that? Allow the older women to teach you. Well, we've got all of your... There's a young woman. There's a young woman. Yeah, she's not young anymore. But she does have a comment. And young women or older women can make comments.
I've been a younger woman before.
Oh,
I think that part of this is perception, and that, maybe it's thought that this is more of a thing than it really is. Because I think one of the reasons that young women, that it's not done much is because it hasn't been done much recently. And
Mm.
I think that if we do it more, it's just, there's never been a greater need for that to happen,
Mhm.
for older women to teach
Teach the young.
the younger women. And, I think if we wouldn't be where we are now if we've done as good a job of that leading up to this
Okay.
as we have. It needs to happen, and it's never been more crucial in our current society,
Mhm.
which is just rancid.
Yeah.
So, and then the mothers teaching their daughters. And another thing I wanted to say is that it's not older women telling the younger women what to do or how to live. It's not that.
Right.
It's older women developing relationships and loving friendships with younger women,
Mhm.
and then leading them by example and sometimes counsel.
Right.
I think that's more a picture of what it would look like.
Mhm. I wish y'all could have heard the whole thing. She was commenting about the older women teaching the younger women, and of course she believes they should be, and really the important thing about it would be building relationships between the older and the younger women, so, and by example and by teaching. Okay? Okay, let's go back to Proverbs. We know Proverbs is ageless. The principles that are found here are applicable today. It's a principle with a New Testament application and meaning. In Proverbs 20 in verse 1, Proverbs 20, verse 1. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. Okay, now, once again, look at what the verses say. Wine is a mocker, I would agree with that, right? And strong drink is a brawler. I mean, it's worse. Whoever is led astray by it. Now, if I knew the Bible taught never take a drink, then a verse that says don't be led astray by it would not have any meaning to me. You see what I'm bringing these things forth just for us to consider when it comes to coming to a full conclusion about this matter. Why are these verses worded the way they are? And we have to pay attention to the way they are worded. Turn over to chapter 23 of Proverbs. Verse 19. Proverbs 23, 19. Hear, my son, and be wise. Now here's Solomon talking to his son. He wants his son not to be a fool, but to be wise. We all want that, don't we? And guide your heart in the way. Do not mix with winebibbers or with gluttonous eaters of flesh, of meat. For the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe a man with rags. Okay, here we go. Okay, don't mix with winebibbers. Winebibbers is another word for drunkards. Okay, don't associate with them. Don't come together in their groups, and associate with them, because they'll try to get you to drink the wine and be drinking with them. And don't, or with gluttonous eaters of meat or food, So there's gluttony and intoxication there. Don't run around with these people. Don't mix with these people. That's great advice. Then he says, for the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe a man with rags. Okay, if I drink a beer in the evening with my meal, if I drink a glass of wine before I go to bed, is that going to lead me to poverty? Is that going to lead me to rags? No, it's not. But You know how wasteful it can be and how many people use their whole living and their parents' living and anywhere they can get the money, to buy booze. That is definitely 100% wrong. Wrong. Here's gluttony. We talked just a little bit last week about, okay, if one drink makes you a drunk, then one bite of food makes you a glutton. But I don't like that comparison, but I guess it's okay. How much do you need to eat to be a glutton? When you go to McDonald's, if you eat 2 hamburgers, does that make you a glutton? Yesterday, when we had our meal, our soup and chili and beans, I had 2 helpings, I'll call it, helpings in the little bowls. They weren't very big bowls, by the way. 2 helpings of cornbread and pinto beans. And then I had a helping of vegetable soup with cornbread. And I forget who gave us this vegetable soup. Was it you, Jane, gave us the vegetable soup? Well, we had a bowl of that last night with cornbread. Okay, so I ate 2 bowls of pinto beans and 2 bowls of cornbread and 4 pieces of cornbread. Does that make me a glutton? Hey, might make me a pig, sure. We've all pigged out before, but that's a lot of difference between a person that is a glutton and a person who overeats, actually every once in a while. But gluttony is not something we want people to do, and drunkenness is not something we would want people to come to either. Let's continue in this chapter. Turn over to verse 29. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has complaints? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? He who drinks a beer with his supper. Is that what it says? No, that's not what it says. It says, those who linger long at the wine. And obviously wine here is not grape juice. Wine here is actually intoxicating drink. And then he says, or those who go in search of mixed wine. I'm going to go to the store and buy it. Or I'm going to go to Joe's house because Joe's got it. Or I'm just going to go find it, searching for it. Do not look at the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it swirls around smoothly. And some people interpret that to say, hey, not only you should not drink it or you can't drink it, but you shouldn't even look at it. Well, this word look has different meanings in the Hebrew. One of the meanings of that word could be gaze. The word is actually translated in Genesis chapter 1. You don't have to turn there. I want to look at a couple of these verses. Genesis chapter 1, excuse me, in the creation, when God started creating things. So he creates on the earth grass and seed, herbs and fruit trees and different things like that. And he said in the middle or toward the end of verse 12, and God saw that it was good. That word saw there is the same word that's translated look at here in this verse. Do you think God just glanced at his creation? No, I'm sure he looked at every single thing that he did, his creation. And over and over and over again, no matter what he created, it says he saw that it was good, except for one. And what did he say then? He said, it is very good. Okay, let's continue on this, verse 30. 31, 32. At the last, when it's come to its full extent, when it's come to what it does at the very last of tearing at wine, it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things. Somebody was talking yesterday about hallucinations that people see. And your heart will utter perverse things. How many times have you heard people under the influence of alcohol just say all kinds of filthiness and things come from their mouth? Yes, you will be like one who lies down in the midst of the sea, or like one who lies at the top of the mast, saying, they have struck me, but I was not hurt. They have beaten me, but I did not feel it. And I've seen fights between people that are drunk before. It's amazing how they can beat on each other because they don't feel the pain until it gets to a certain, point, and then they begin to feel it. When shall I awake that I may seek another drink? There we go. Gets up in the morning. What's his first thought? I want to take another drink. That's who's being talked about in this passage. Whether we believe this or we believe that, at least interpret the passage the way it ought to be interpreted. Pardon?
You have just described addiction.
Yeah.
What addiction is. That's all
Yeah.
that's what you focus your time, our time, everything else. When do I have the next? When I get the next, that's addiction.
Yeah. And whether it's alcohol or drugs, as we'll start talking about next week, what if we as Christians would say when we awake that we can seek another opportunity to serve or another opportunity to glorify God? What if we had that kind of attitude in comparison to this that's we know is sinful? Let's turn to Isaiah for just a minute. You might be surprised how much Isaiah talks about this. Isaiah 5. Make sure I get all these verses. Nothing on that to help. Verse 11. Isaiah 5, verse 11. Woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may follow intoxicating drink, who continue until night, till wine inflames them. The harp and the strings, the tambourine and the flute and the wine are in their feasts, but they do not regard the work of the Lord. So let's interpret this fairly. Here are people that do not want to do the work of the Lord. They would rather rise up in the early and drink all day till they're inflamed with wine, and then they go out to their parties. I just want you to consider that. Okay? Look at chapter 28 of Isaiah. Start at the first verse of Isaiah 28. It's talking here about Jerusalem and Ephraim or Israel, the different tribes, and how they have turned from the Lord and the different sins that they're involved in, and looking at their lifestyles and such. Woe to the crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower, which is at the head of the verdant valleys, to those who are overcome with wine. Behold, the Lord has a mighty and strong one, like a tempest of hail and a destroying storm, like a flood of mighty waters overflowing, who will bring them down to the earth with his hand. The crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim, will be trampled underfoot. So here he's talking about the leaders of these people, probably mainly, and how they are not doing their work. And so God's going to bring judgment upon them. Now we can keep reading here. Let's go down to verse 7. But they also have erred through wine and through intoxicating drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through intoxicating drink. They are swallowed up by wine. They are out of the way through intoxicating drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. For all tables are full of vomit and filth. No place is clean. That's a yucky picture there toward the end, isn't it? But here he's talking about the leadership of these people, the priest and the prophet. You know, we have other verses in the Old Testament that tell the priests when they go into the temple or the tabernacle, whichever time they were serving, that they were not to drink at all when they went in there. You know, because they couldn't talk to God and listen to God and then talk to the people with wine affecting their understanding. The prophets, you know, were the same thing. God revealed something to a prophet, and he's an alcoholic or he's intoxicated at the time. He won't interpret that correctly. I don't think God ever revealed anything to an intoxicated prophet in the Old Testament. But this is talking about the leadership. And there is a verse in the Old Testament that talks about wine, kings and princes ought not to drink. Just like in the New Testament, elders ought not to drink because they are the overseers. They are the shepherds. They are the leaders, the spiritual shepherds and overseers and leaders in a congregation of God's people. And woe to the elder who would lead people astray through his teaching on alcoholic consumption. That's why I tell everybody how I feel about it and what I tell people. I don't drink. I don't want anybody to drink. I would never encourage anybody to drink. Is that clear? Everybody understands that, right? But I want to make sure I'm interpreting correctly these passages. And, you know, I think I am, just like they think they're interpreting them correctly when they say, well, this verse says don't drink at all. Okay. We only have about 5 minutes, so I just want to open it up to you all as we close this part here about alcohol consumption. And somebody who hasn't made a comment yet, who would like to make one, I want to open the floor to you. And it would not hurt me at all if you say, I don't agree with that, and I think the Bible teaches that you should never, never, ever take a drink. It is a sin. Anybody?
I would just like to say that my father was an alcoholic, and he had his mother's brother who was a Methodist minister, and so I used to talk to him about my father, and he quoted Proverbs 20.
Mm-hmm.
Just always begin with a strong drink is rage.
That's the King James translation.
That's what the King James says.
Yeah.
Strong drink is rage, and whosoever is
Deceived by it.
deceived thereby is not wise.
Right.
And so I just remember that as a little girl, that bothered me as a little girl, my father was an alcoholic. He quoted that scripture to me, and I have remembered it ever since.
Well, I'm glad you have, yeah. Glad you have. Right. Yeah, I was never, I've told you all this before, I've never raised in the church, never had any teaching that I can remember about drinking or not drinking. My father, I don't remember him drinking in my lifetime. His sister told me that when he was a younger man, he could really get on some drunks. But, you know, the man that I knew was not that way. And for some reason, without anybody ever teaching me this is wrong, and having a lot of examples of people around about, you know, drinking, I decided not to drink. You know, I come to that conclusion. Anybody else? And we'll let Bonnie. Let's let Bonnie. She's the head of the family. We'll let her get it. I'm just kidding. Don't jump down. Go ahead, Bonnie. You do yours about a minute, and then we'll let Kent do a minute. Right. You can become a glutton if you start eating. You can become a adulterer if you just start looking at women. There's all kinds of things that we could say you can become this. Don't get it started. But I agree, don't get it started. Don't get it started. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Kent?
I absolutely agree with everything you talked about. I like what Kara said about if the church has been addressing these issues like it should have been all along, we wouldn't be in such a dramatic world we are today. The problem always has been the church has backed off of these controversial issues. Absolutely. I'm proud to see you bring these issues to the forefront.
Yeah.
These are the issues that need to be addressed. You know, I agree. I mean, we should never drink, but there are those who do.
Mhm.
So we got to get the people to see what's more important.
Mhm.
Not so much whether you ever drank or not, but how much are you going to serve God and make a difference in your life and make a difference in the church?
Right.
That's the real issue.
Yeah.
And as a church, as a bishop, of his followers, we need to work with people, have compassion on people, and like Karen said earlier, is have developing a relationship with the older men, the younger women, the older men, the younger men, to be able to educate people on how to do what is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And that's the whole point.
Yeah.
We're going to be addressing a lot of different issues, drugs, sexuality, all these different things that have been brought to this border this year. That we're going to be bringing to you, the congregation, to help us understand each other how to teach what the Bible truly teaches about some of these issues,
Mhm.
and how we need to correct our minds and our thoughts for doing what's right and what God has for us to do.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time.